Well, the season of graduation parties is winding down. We've been lucky this year. The ones that we've gone to, the weather has been just fabulous. When I go to these things, I try, if I get a chance, to get off with the graduate for just a moment, a little advice maybe. I always start the same way. I say, are you tired of people asking you what you want to be, what you want to do? And they're going to keep doing that for the rest of the summer and maybe beyond. What do you want to be and what do you want to do? It's an interesting question. Most of us don't know at that stage of the game how to answer that question. Yeah, we all knew that kid in third grade. She knew she wanted to be an architect. And but most of us, I was through 2 grad programs before I figured out what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And even, when we think we know what we want to be, we might be dreaming. I remember once telling my mom and dad that I wanted to be an astronaut. My dad was a naval aviator and a corporate pilot. He was steeped in aviation during the glory years. He was following this budding field of astronauts, very carefully. And he said, well, now, that would require an engineering degree, and that would require math, and that's not exactly your strong suit. And I thought my mom was going to explode. She jumped into his case. Fred, you're crushing his dream. And even though she's standing up for me, I'm feeling a little sorry for the old man. It's like, take it easy. He wasn't being mean or demeaning. He was just making a point here. And we don't know what we want to be. I want to be a rock star. I want to be a professional athlete. What are the odds? I tell these students, aim high. When people say, what do you want to be? Let's figure whatever you say you're probably not going to be. It's an aim, want to be an neurosurgeon. I want to operate on people in low Earth orbit, a new niche I'm going to develop there. Aim high, But they say there's no such thing as a bad question, but that one's close. It's close. I think a much better question is, what are you built to be? What are your talents and abilities? Things that come easier for you than for other people. And I may have to spend some time to think about that, but I think it's a much more challenging, insightful question. What are you made to be? Why should you go through life running twice as fast to keep up with the natural at what you're trying to be? Why not let that person run twice as fast to keep up with you, because you're the natural at what you do and what you be? What our lasting satisfaction in what we do is always going to come from doing what we do well, being recognized for it, being rewarded for it. That's where our satisfaction is ultimately going to lie. And so I think it was Shakespeare that said, what are you made to be? That is the question. Something like that. That's a better question. Maybe the best question of all is, what has God created you to be? What gifts and talents and abilities has He given you? And what part of His plan are you uniquely suited to fulfill? We're going to talk about being uniquely suited for things in our message for today. So let's dive right into our text. Jesus has just sent His disciples off to minister on their own. Now they're a mixed bag. They've got their spiritual gifts, and He's given them their assignments and sent them off. He wants to see if they can continue His ministry if He's no longer with them. He knows some things they don't. Of course, that leaves Jesus free a little while. He can go do whatever. Well, He ends up preaching and teaching in Galilee. And it's interesting to whom He reveals God's word and from whom He conceals it. At that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things, His teaching, His preaching. You have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this was your good pleasure. God was taking pleasure in this, not only in revealing spiritual truth to people, but in concealing it. And Jesus was a little tickled by that too, and he's praising God for that. Specifically, he is concealing God's word from the wise and learned. Okay? The experts in the law, the spiritual chief priests and the religious leaders of the world who've all gone to school, who are legends in their own mind, who are the experts in all things religious. God is concealing his word from them, and he's revealing it to the common person, common everyday people. John the Baptist, who's not preaching in the magnificent temple, but is out in the wilderness somewhere, dressed poorly, and he is his words are abrasive, also known as prophetic. Yeah, but the people are flocking out to him in the wilderness. And Jesus' own disciples, fishermen, common everyday laborers, a tax collector, kind of a despised role in their day. And it's interesting to whom God reveals his word and from whom he conceals it in Jesus, his Son. All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son. Herod doesn't know. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son and those to whom he chooses to reveal him. When God was born into our world, he was not born in a palace. He was not born to privilege. He was born to a common carpenter and his wife. And he was born in Nazareth. Interesting, when Philip was called to be a disciple, he runs and tells his pal, Nathanael, about Jesus of Nazareth. And Nathanael's response is, Nazareth? Nazareth? What good can come from that his seed big town? That's where he's born. When he's born into our world, he's born where nobody expects him. Not among the high and the mighty, but among the least and the lowly. And he conceals himself from the high and the mighty. And he calls the least and the lowly to follow him and to find rest in him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Burdened. In those days, the religious experts had come up with 613 religious regulations designed to condition virtually every aspect of daily living. Think about that. 613 rules to prescribe behavior. Who can keep that? About the time you get to 415, you forgot 300. Who can do that unless you're born in the lap of luxury, you don't have anything else to do, maybe nobody's watching, you can pretend that you keep all those. But if you didn't keep all those, if you didn't keep one of them, you were a sinner. And then you had to pay money to the religious leaders to get ritually clean again. What a racket. And even Jesus and his disciples were condemned as sinners because they violated the rules. One day Jesus is out, he sees a sick person. He heals a sick person. And they go, oh, that's a violation of rule number 422. You can't work on the Sabbath day. Well, Jesus just went, he just healed somebody. Nice thing to do. But he was a sinner because he violated the rules. And his disciples, same thing. They would walk on the Sabbath and they would pluck grain. That is, you just go by, you're allowed to do this. You just go buy a stalk of wheat, you strip off the things, and you rub them in your hand, and you blow the chaff away. You got a snack called wheat berries. Here, they go, uh-oh, you're working on the Sabbath. Technical foul here, and you're a sinner. Your disciples are sinners. These are bad people. And, this minutia these man-made religious rules and regulations that are so distracting. And it laid a burden on people to try and remain righteous according to the experts. Jesus, in the Gospel of Luke, said to these experts, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load people down with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them." Jesus came as a spiritual alternative to all this, and he's liberating the people. He is freeing them from the dictates of the religious leaders. And there's 613 rules and regulations, that sort of thing. He's freeing them from that. He's freeing them to worship God according to the dictates of their own consciences. He's freeing them from the distractions that keep them from truly serving God. To do a nice deed for someone who's needy, in trouble, and we get distracted from the weightier matters by all the minutiae. And he is liberating them from this burden. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, the yoke he's talking about here is not an egg. It's not even spelled the same way. Y-O-K-E. A yoke is what connects a beast of burden to a load, a wagon, a plow, so that they can pull it. Usually it was a wooden yoke placed over the shoulders of the animal. It might be a double yoke. If it's a plow they're pulling, they need extra strength. So they have a yoke and maybe strap it to them, and when they pull, they can pull the implement. See? And sometimes their yokes were made for people. In those days, women in particular, you'd have thought I should speak about this. My wife works like two men at home, which is good, because one of them isn't working. But back then, women had to carry water. All the water that you used to wash, to cook, to clean, to drink, all that you had to carry from the well in the center of town. You had to carry it home. Listen, water weighs 8.3 pounds per gallon. You got 2 5-gallon buckets. You got 90 pounds of water there. Now, that gets old, carrying that, unless you have a yoke. A yoke then your muscles you're using are the much bigger and more powerful leg muscles. And it's across your shoulders and the 2 buckets. I'll show you a picture of them. I took this from Layman's Hardware. Layman caters to the Amish. They don't use electricity. So now this has been a great season for growing things. Our farmers markets prove of that. But some summers are very hot, and when they need to irrigate their garden patch, they can't turn on the spigot and run a hose out there. They got to carry the water. So Layman still makes yokes for people to carry that burden, so that it's a much easier task. I took the liberty of making a picture of that, and I'll show it to you. I'll pass them out here. You can look at them. Now, on the back is I don't know how this got on here. Yesterday, Hannah Gear sent me a picture from Chandler, Arizona, where we planted a church, and Reverend Horak, her dad, is out there helping her set up her class to teach, and she sent that picture of him to me. I don't know how it got on the back of this, but just ignore this. Okay? All right, every little group here gets one. Take a look at that. Pass it along. That is a yoke, and that is a guy who is carrying 90 pounds of water. And he's not a spring chicken. Let's pass those around. Don't look at the back. This is the kind of yoke that Jesus is referring to. One that is fitted to the carrier. You don't want to just put a stick over your shoulder. It's going to have knots in it and little twigs that have been broken off. And you especially don't want to put a yoke like that on a beast of burden, because you will wound that animal. Just when you, in the field of opportunity, it's plowing time again, and you don't got an animal to do the plowing because you had an ill-fitting yoke. And so this yoke is made of poplar, very smooth, made in Ohio, by the way, and it's to fit a human being. Now, in our text, and so you see that a yoke can either be a useful tool, welcome tool, or it can be torture, depending upon whether it's well-fitted or not. Hence the title of our message, The Well-Fitted Yoke. In our text, Jesus says that his yoke is easy. That's not a real accurate translation that I'm using here. The Greek root that's translated here as easy is more literally translated as well-fitted. For my yoke is well-fitted. You know, Jesus, as a carpenter's son, would have probably fitted his share of yokes to the people that were using them or the animals. Now, Brother Ober here, he raises draft. He's got a draft horse. Is it a Clydesdale? Yes. Not a Percheron. No. Yeah, Clydesdale. And he's got a pony. Mary Beth saw the picture. I want one, she said. You don't have a yoke that's going to fit the Clydesdale that's also going to fit the pony that pulls a little pony cart. And Jesus must have fitted his share of yokes to people. He knows how important it is to use a well-fitted yoke. No one size fits all here. And we find in the church there's no one size that fits all. There's the Roman Catholic Church, our brothers and sisters down the street who we rejoice in, and we are yoked together with them today. Their youth and our youth are going to Rushville, Indiana for work camp. There are any number of Orthodox Christians who worship according to their pattern and practice of worship. There are much greater number of Protestant denominations. Now, we can distract ourselves and pick on the other way. You're not doing it right. Out there at one church, they got guitars and drums and words projected. And we could pick on each other. Our style is not their style. But that just distracts us, doesn't it? It distracts us from the weightier matters of the Bible and what we're called to hear. It's either concealed from us, we either distract ourselves, or we hear that message. Now, I mentioned a while ago double yokes. There's a couple of images here. I didn't bring it with me. I have the stole we wear. I've showed children this before. If you take those tailing ends, put it behind you, you get a little kid behind you, and then you're the beast of burden. A stole is an image of being yoked for Christ. He's the driver, or we can be yoked with Jesus on a double tree yoke and pull together. We pull together with him. Or, time goes on and what may be religious practices that served a purpose at one time become twisted for self-serving purposes. And you know what happens to a yoke when it becomes twisted? It is no longer well-fitted for the task. What is your unique constellation of gifts and talents and abilities? How has the Creator created you in a unique way to fulfill a specific part of his plan? You know, we're in the season of rest and recreation here, although many of our ministries are unique to the summer. VBS, work camp, church camp, farmers market. But we recess during the summer and everybody takes off for a while and comes back and pretty soon we'll start a new program year in Rally Day. And so we're going to begin to consider now how God is fitting us for ministry. And he's not only fitting us for service here, he's fitting our souls for hereafter. And that's why I changed the hymn, because I think we're going to find a connection between the two in that hymn. So let's rise as we sing together, "A Charge to Keep I Have."